Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today do I have something special for you all. We are talking about fentanyl remediation and human decomposition. Weird, I know, but once you know who my special guest is, it will all make sense. If you haven't guessed it, it's Jeff Jones. He's a certified bioforensic restoration specialist and a certified forensic operator with over 50 years of field experience. He's a former U.S. Army soldier, SWAT team leader, and the youngest attendee of the FBI Academy in Quantico. He holds certifications as a crime scene track investigator and search and rescue tracker. He is the founding member of BioSheen Services LLC, and he was the director of forensic operations for GBAC with ISSA. He is widely regarded as the most experienced forensic restoration operator in the world. So, without further ado, please welcome Jeff.
Hi, Kayla. How are you?
Hi, good. Fancy meeting you here. In the world of technology, right? It's nice to be able to see each other face to face. We do talk quite a bit, but being able to have you on Ask the Expert is very long overdue. And I'm so happy that you're here because we have a lot to talk about today.
Well, I'm very humbled that you would say that. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. So, as I mentioned in the intro, fentanyl remediation and human decomposition, but we're going to take it back to the basics, if you will, and we're going to talk about what we're doing at the experience this year and why we're doing it, but also the importance of utilizing science, data, and the proper processes and procedures. So many of you may not have seen it just yet, but the agenda is out for the experience. And this year, Jeff Jones is going to be joined by Dr. Jennifer DeBruin, and they are talking about Tales from the Crypt. So I don't think I could do this justice. So I'm going to toss this one off to you, Jeff, and kind of talk about why we're doing this, what it's about, and how it applies to our industry as a whole. And by our industry as a whole, I mean cleaning, restoration, inspection, health and safety, all of that encompassed. How and why is this so important for us?
Well, let's look at the working title just for a moment. Tales from the Crypt. It sounds kind of scary. Let me base everything on a really old book, one of the most widely read books in history, and it is appointed to man once to die, and then the judgment. There's no use being afraid of something that we know that is going to happen. And so, what we're going to talk about, and we're very, very blessed in this presentation to have Dr. Jennifer DeBruin with the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. She is with the Forensic Anthropology Department. And if you watch any of these crime shows like the Forensic Files, then you're quite familiar with a place called the Body Farm. And this is where human donor bodies are taken and exposed to different environments, different temperature ranges, and human decomposition is measured. And then this helps law enforcement, the judicial system, the medical field to determine causes of death, how long were they there. Now, why is this applicable to us as forensic restorers or people that are in what I call traditional restoration, fire, water, mold? Because sometimes you can come across an undiscovered death that wasn't even noticed there before, or that could be a part of your restoration equation. So let me back up just for a moment and say, in the world of forensics, there are four types of death: homicide, suicide, accidental, and natural. Any one of those can become an unattended death, leading to human decomposition and or advanced human decomposition if the deceased is not discovered. Now, if we go back about 30 years ago, there's a book that a lot of people like to quote, and it was written by a former director of the EPA, Dr. Michael Berry. And in that book, it's titled Protecting the Built Environment. And on page 181, second paragraph down, he goes into what he termed at the time, over 30 years ago, an unnoticed death. Well, eventually somebody notices that. So we know that today because the human language changes, verbiage changes, and science is constantly growing. So we refer to that as an unattended death. And so, what Dr. De Bruin is going to walk us through are the different stages of human decomposition. And what we're going to figure out and what we're going to put together is how does this affect the indoor environment when we're restoring that? Where do we reach advanced human decomposition? How does temperature affect that? How does relative humidity affect that? And working on a prime directive of safety, safety for the team of forensic restorers, and safety for all future occupants, how are we going to address our three big concerns: structure, contents, indoor air quality, and again, not necessarily in that order. How are we going to come up with a plan to contain, control, neutralize, and remove the contaminants that may be involved in this, such as vectors? How do we look at cross contamination, cross biocontamination, and deal with surfaces that now have become fomites? So, how are we going to address all that? And those are the key parts of the presentation. You know, this has never been done in the industry. Dr. Jennifer De Bruin has never come to a major cleaning and restoration convention. And I'm very, very blessed to have her as a friend and a colleague. And if you never, ever attend another lecture on pathology within this industry, this is the one to attend.
I would definitely say too, it really breaks down what we need to understand in order to do our jobs right, no matter what the situation is, right? If you understand advanced decomposition and what comes out of the human body or what can be transferred, right, from cross-contamination from vectors, I think it it brings your level of mindset and expertise up that much higher because we're bringing in people who are within our industry, but in a different light, right? She's more on the scientific side. She's breaking things down that we don't do here in our industry, but we do come across. And so when we talked about having this session, it was well thought out because this is something that we don't get at any conference. And how can we elevate and evolve our industry? And this is just one of them, right? I can't wait to see this entire 2 hour session because I think our socks are going to be blown off, if I'm being quite honest, and it'll have all of us leaving with a little bit more of an open mindset, if you will, but also a deeper understanding of some of the stuff that we will come in contact with, if not now, in the future.
Sure. Well, you know, here's the situation right now that within the population of the United States, we have two growing segments of that. One is the elderly, and as they increase in age, one of the things that they do is they outlive their social circles. And so a lot of people pass, elderly people pass, and nobody checked on them because they don't have anybody. And then, unfortunately, another segment of our population are people that deal with psychological and addiction issues. And these people isolate and self medicate. And I'm not going to say that every one of them, but over the many years that I've been doing this, a lot of times when you respond to an unattended death, and there are addiction issues such as alcohol or narcotics or even psychological, those residences, more often than not, can be termed unsanitary dwellings, okay, because it just goes hand in hand with their living conditions. You know, if you and I didn't come home or didn't show up to work, then people would be looking for us. I mean, people would be concerned about you. There might be some people that threw a party if I didn't show up. But
No, that is not true.
but, but regardless of the fact, these people have simply shut themselves off away from society. And so, again, in former director of the EPA's Dr. Michael Berry's book, Protecting the Built Environment, page 181, second paragraph down, it begins to list things there 30 years ago that we should be looking at. Though some of the terms, and let me say one of the things that he wrote was everything's got to be disinfected and cleaned. He put everything. Well, today we know that you have to clean something before you can disinfect it. And to be quite honest with it, you can't disinfect anything. You can clean it and you can apply an EPA registered hospital grade tuberculocidal disinfectant with a 6 log kill. But that disinfectant can't do anything until you've prepped that surface with forensic cleaning. And everything that we do sets up that final stage of professional disinfecting. But how do we know, based on science, how do we know those surfaces are prepped? Well, we're gonna take readings, which we should on every job. We should test. What's the environment going in? What's the environment going out? What is the hygiene level of that? And one of the best instruments that we have today to measure that is an ATP meter. And so we can take ATP readings of different surfaces throughout the environment. And then again, post cleaning, because that's what it really does. Okay. It doesn't measure the efficacy of a disinfectant. It lets us know where we're at on a level of hygiene. And so if we've got those numbers down into single digits, preferably zeros, now we know that disinfectant can do exactly what we want it to do.
Well, I would definitely say this plays into the role of training tactics, techniques, and tools that you teach in your own certification course, right? And I think to your point, there's a process, right? You have to clean prior to applying the disinfectant. And I think all of this just solidifies that there's proper processes and procedures. But to your point, Dr. Michael Berry wrote about this, you said 30 years ago. Yes,
Right.
terminology has changed, but the processes and the science behind it and the mentality behind it hasn't, right? And so some things in our industry are going to change terminology, maybe the type of products we use, or maybe technology, but our mindset, our end goal, and the proper way to do things will always stay that way, right? You have to clean to disinfect. It's not disinfect and then clean because, well, that's pointless. It doesn't work.
Because it's not going to work.
And to your point, I'm gonna have a proud moment here. Zero is possible because I went through the process and I got a zero on
Yeah.
my
Yes, you
ATP
did.
reading. And so, I think the importance of training tactics, techniques, and tools, and also having the proper mindset also helps you attain just that, right? We want to obtain zero, but also the most important thing is having a clean, livable space for the occupants, right? And
Sure.
and you can't do that without having this mentality and also using the right tools, processes, and procedures. And that's what this is all about too, I think, for people to understand that this was 30 years ago where Dr. Michael Berry said clean and disinfect, right? That's still the same, right? We still want to clean and apply a disinfectant to make sure that the space is inhabitable, right? That's not changed, but the way we do things, the things we use, and the mentality have changed. And Jeff is living proof. He's been doing this for 50 years and things have changed.
Well, 30 years ago, when we said that we were in, I'm going to put this back in the proper order, we're going to clean and disinfect. Okay, so we had only really a couple of modes, three at best. Did it look clean? Did it smell clean? And I guess you could use a white glove like they did
Mhm.
in the army, and run across something and does that look clean? But now we have scientific instruments to let us know at what level of cleanliness are we at, because there's two reasons to clean anything: health and appearance. You can clean for appearance and still have a microbial hostile environment. You
Mhm.
can clean for health and appearance will take care of itself.
But I would definitely say to your point, we saw that during COVID, if I'm being quite honest. It looked clean, but a lot of times it wasn't clean, and that's how people were still getting sick, right? And so I think to your point, yes, you can clean for looks or health, and they may not have the same outcome, right? You may think you're doing it right, and it looks clean, smells clean, white glove it, looks clean, but it's really not because of microbial issues that you can't see with your eye. However, if you clean for health, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to look and smell clean, if you will.
Absolutely. With our company, we don't have any deodorizers. We don't use deodorizers. Those are masking agents. And so if you are cleaning for health, if you're using forensic cleaning techniques, if you contain, control, neutralize, and remove the contaminant, most of the times the odors associated with human decompositions are caused by odor-causing bacteria. And so if you get rid of those, you get rid of the source, you get rid of the odors. I've never used a deodorizer on an unattended death job.
And I think that's a big thing to say too for people to understand the power of the products and the processes that we utilize can do just that. You don't have to have extra products or extra tools for masking a smell if it's done properly. And I think that's really key too, because sometimes you can hurt the environment with other products that you think are masking or taking away a smell, right? I think there was, I'll have to look back, but I know that, when you use essential oils and things like that, it can oftentimes compromise your environment because of what essential oils put off. A lot of people don't talk about that. They think it smells good, makes you relax, but it could be harmful.
It may smell good to you. See, that's all subjective. When you
Hmm.
start introducing odors into an environment, which might smell good to this person over here, but to that person over there, they can't stand it. And so we want to leave that just smelling clean and fresh.
Yeah, and I would say to your point, a good way to look at it is some people say gasoline smells good, and other people are like, I cannot stand the smell of gasoline, right? And so this is no different in what we're doing in our day-to-day jobs, right? Yeah, lavender may smell great to Jeff, but maybe I'm not a fan of lavender, right? So that's where we don't cross those lines. We utilize the products that we know are going to do the job without adding extra fluff, if you will, to make it smell like lavender or oil to mask, what we've done here on our job. So we've you've spoke at the experience quite a few times, and this one was one that you were very passionate for, like the last year we've been talking about. And I think I kind of I want you to share why you're so passionate about this, because I think a lot of it has to do with health and safety, if you will, but also just for us as an industry to utilize those who may not be directly or in our industry to help elevate our skill set and our mindset to serve our customers better.
Well, my father was a cleaner. My mother was a cleaner. Nobody asked me if I wanted to be one. I got drafted into that into the spring of 1966. And so I was literally raised in this industry and drugged to all of these events. Now, in 1969, my father incorporated his business. And that same year, there was a gentleman in his Sunday school class who made the unfortunate decision to take his own life. All my father knew was somebody was hurting and he could help them. All this guy knew was my father knew how to clean things. And so dad went out and remediated this job with the best that he had at that time and with the tools that he had. There were no courses in this. In fact, the term crime scene cleaner, which I'm not a great fan of, didn't even exist. That term didn't come about till the 1990s, and especially it elevated with movies like Samuel L. Jackson, The Cleaner, and of course, everybody's seen Sunshine Cleaning. Uh, and so growing up, we just associated jobs with what happened. Like a death scene was a homicide scene. If that's what occurred, it was a suicide. Somebody fell off a ladder, hit their head. It was an accidental death. That's what went on their files back in the day. When I was 12, our shop now, we incorporated in 69, and now some years have passed. We're open half a days on Saturdays so people could pick up and drop off Oriental rugs. And so that particular day, it was my father, our general manager, and me. And my dad has me in the back retouching up some fringes that he was not happy with. He was old school Navy. He was picky. And once I finished that, I'm not going to hang these rugs until I get his seal of approval. So I went up front and I asked the general manager, "Where's my dad?" And he said, "Well," he said he went to go look at a death scene. It was a suicide." And I went, "Really?" Because I'm like, "How long is he going to be gone? I'm 12 years old. I want to go." And he said, "He'll be back really quick." He said, "Real, it's close." And so I went in the back and waited on my dad. And when he came back, I said, "Dad, can you look at these fringes?" He just took a quick look. He goes, "Yeah, those look good. Hang them." And started gathering up materials. I said, "Where have you been?" He said, "Looking at a job site." I said, "So where are you going?" He goes, "I'm going to go and clean something up." I was like, "Really? What are you going to clean?" Like I didn't know. And he said, "Well," he said, "I'm going to go clean up a suicide." And I said, "Wow, can I go with you?" And he goes, "No." Didn't even blink. I said, "Come on, Dad, I can help." I said, "Yeah, please let me go." My dad thought about it for a moment. Here's the reasons I got to go. One, he'd already seen this incident site. It was a perfect one to break somebody in on. It was a small caliber, small exit wound, very small debris field. Two, I spent my summers on a farm in Tennessee, and it was a real working farm. So if we're going to have chicken on Sunday, you got to catch them on Saturday. Okay, so I understood the cycle of life on that. But three, and here's the real big reason I got to go. My mom was out of town. Okay. And so my dad said, "If you tell your mom, I'll wear your butt out." And this is 1972. He meant that. You could do that without going to jail. And so we went out and took care of that. And so I did my first job with my father. Years later in the 80s, my father and I did an unattended death. And I'll spare you all the details of that, but it was so bad that the next day my father came into work and we were always there early as a point. We'd have a cup of coffee and talk about the day or whatever was on our minds. But this particular morning, after that unattended death job, my dad walked in and didn't even say good morning. He just started to walk out and then he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, "I don't want to do that anymore." And I went, "You don't want to do what anymore?" That totally caught me off guard because we did so many services within our cleaning business. And he said, "I don't want to do any more death scene cleanup." And I went, "Really? Why not?" And he said, "Son, I took two showers when I got home last night." He said, "One right when I got home and another one right before I went to bed." He said, "It is the last thing I thought about before I went to sleep. And it's the first thing I thought about when I woke up this morning. And I don't want to do it anymore." You know how, do you know how smart that was? What he was doing was he was creating barriers to prevent any psychological damage. He had reached his saturation point. But I said, "Dad, I want to continue to do it." To which nobody really recognized it as a standalone industry at that time.
Yeah.
I want to continue to do that. And my father stopped, and he was not one to just hand out compliments left and right. But he said, "You're good at it." And he said, "Who knows, Jeff? Maybe one day you'll take it to a different level. But son, all I've got to say is this. The day you're not going to treat that as a ministry, close the doors and go do something else." That's exactly what that is. It's a ministry today based on science. When someone calls us, and anybody in the restoration industry, what they're really experiencing is a black swan. Do you know what a black swan is, Kayla?
I do, but I want you to answer it so you can tell the audience what a black swan is.
Black swan is something that no one saw coming. No one could have predicted. No one could have predicted that pipe bursting over there. No one could have predicted that fire because they would have taken steps to prevent it. No one could have prevented that individual from taking their own life, or could have stopped that homicide. No one could have prevented that individual from drinking themselves to death, and it's 2 weeks later when someone found him, or they would have done something. So these are black swans. These are the things that bring the whole industry together. Without those black swans, we'd all be doing something else. And so what we do is go out and try to make the world a better place. After a black swan has visited a residence, a home, a business, a government institution, and hopefully take along not only training tactics, techniques, and tools, but care, compassion, and concern for those affected. That is the ministry.
Yeah, and I would say to your point, you're not there just to help clean and restore a space. You oftentimes are there to console and have conversations with those who are going through something. And so I think all of that ties into what we do on a daily basis. And to your point for your dad, he knew when he had met his capacity. And I think it saved a lot of heartache and potential wrong things that could have happened, right? I think we see a lot of times people keep doing what they're doing because that's all they know or that's what they used to love, and accidents happen that way, right? Fortunately, your dad taught you the craft and the art, and you were able to carry on his legacy, and you're touching others' lives. And there too will be a day where either you have had your last, or you may want to retire, right? I know we don't talk about retirement, but there may be a time where you want to retire, and that's okay. Everybody meets their time as far as capacity, and your dad did a great job, and I think he left a great example for you and those who you teach, right? Because it's okay. It's not a failure. You've just had your time, and it's time to move on to something else.
Well, thank you very much for honoring my father like that, because that's a driving force in what I do. We all reach a point where we're going to lose people in our lives the longer that we live. But I constantly feel him, looking over my shoulder. And sometimes it's a pat on the shoulder, sometimes it's a thump upside the head. You know, what are you thinking? Do better than that. Why did you say that? So I'm sure in the
Well,
next life I'm either going to get a handshake and a hug or a boom. What were you thinking when you said that?
I think you might get both, but it depends what the order is, right?
Yeah,
Right?
and
Because
that's okay. That's all right.
that is, and I would definitely say just to kind of continue this conversation about, what your dad taught you and instilled in you, it's also driven you to tackle some of the most dangerous contaminants that we'll ever face. One of which is a very hot topic, and I think we're gonna talk about this and do some hands-on stuff here in the future. It's an illicit drug, if you will, and it's fentanyl. We're seeing it more and more often than not, unfortunately, and it's a very dangerous job to remediate, but it's also very important that we know what we're doing. So when people come in after us, they too are safe when they are not in protective equipment. So, I personally went through Microbial Warrior with Jeff and Lori and the team there at Microbial Warrior, and it really got my mind flowing. I live in Las Vegas. We've seen a lot of fentanyl in our area, and the industry has seen it. And so I talked to our counsel for the hands-on, and I called Jeff and I said, "Hey, I think there's something that we need to do for the industry." And it's about awareness. This is not a training exercise. This is about awareness and how dangerous handling fentanyl can be. And why we want to stress this is because the the world relies on people like us to make their environment safe, not just to live, but even enter. So, Jeff, I'm going to toss this off to you because you explain this much better than I can. But basically, the reason why we wanted to discuss this is because I had the training. Fortunately enough, I was able to go for 6 days, and this is an art. And for our industry, it's a deal breaker, right? We have to do this right. And so Jeff and Lori and the team have agreed to do just that. So I will get off my soapbox and I'll let Jeff talk about why we're doing this and how important it is to do something like this to bring awareness, but also show that you do need the proper training You can't just see this and go and say you can handle all things. So, Jeff, take it away.
Well, you said a word right there, art. The word art itself means acquired skill. It means you have to do something over and over and over again. Okay. Here's the difference between professionals and amateurs. And this was my attitude and my team's attitude when I worked SWAT. Amateurs train till they get it right. Professionals train till they cannot get it wrong. So let me be clear that right now, fentanyl is the most dangerous contaminant of our lives and is not something to be taken lightly. And when we do this hands-on demonstration, this is for informational purposes only. And we're not going to be covering all of the details there. We're going to be doing 1,000-foot overview of this, showing some equipment, showing techniques and tools and what is required. And we're going to do this at fentanyl risk level 1. Okay. The first time I heard about fentanyl was in 2017, and I was discussing this with certified forensic restoration specialist Dean Kirk, and we were talking about this. And then the next year in 2018, IICRC did that coming out party in Las Vegas for the crime and trauma scene cleaning standard. And the best thing I saw there was the lady that was talking about fentanyl. I'm like, bang, because I had been talking to some of the members that were there in attendance with me. I was like, this is exactly what we're talking about right there. And she was showing the capsules of drugs. And, by the time you got to fentanyl, there was just a little bit in there. And actually, the amount is 2 milligrams to be lethal. That's 2/1000ths of a gram. Well, we can measure this down now into 2 micrograms, 2/1 millionths of a gram. And so now we have carfentanil, which is even more dangerous. But here's the deal on that. Both the carbon base is the same, so we can break those down the same way. We don't have to come up with different formulas. Different formulas, different tactics, different techniques. That's a problem with this industry right now. Everybody thinks you got to have 37 different standards and 57 different techniques. No, you don't. Doesn't matter if it's fire or water or forensics or mold. What we need to look at is what's a prime directive? Safety, regardless of the contaminant. I was raised on what are we cleaning and why. Today it's what are we decontaminating and why. So with a prime directive of safety, and let me say this, safety is more than a checklist. It's installing a culture of safety. In fact, the way that I've observed this industry, two of the best minds in it on safety are Barry Rice with Signal and PureClean and David Hodge. Both those two guys are walking encyclopedias of safety. And anytime that anyone gets a chance to pick their brain, do so. So we never work faster than what we can safely work. Then we want to look at our three considerations, whether this is fentanyl, carfentanil, because this is going to lead into the next contaminant. This is Monday, the 22nd, right after we just did the bombing campaign on Iran. And unless you've got your head in the ground, you'd better be aware of the increasing risk of bioterrorism because it's coming. That's just all there is to that. And I would be wrong if I wasn't raising your antennas to make you aware of this. And so, regardless of whether it is mold or residuals from fire or water or tear gas or fentanyl or weaponized anthrax or a biological, we want to contain, control, neutralize, and remove that contaminant. And so on Wednesday, we'll be properly donning, going through and doing a tactical incursion into a contaminant area, which at fentanyl risk level 1, put out by the Alberta guidelines, which were the first ones written. and which everyone uses for reference points today. And that includes the EPA and IICRC, because that was the first recognized guidelines. And so at fentanyl risk level one, that's intact pills and powders no larger than the size of a dime. How much did I say would kill you? 2 milligrams, two
Milligrams.
1,000. That has the potential to kill more than a few people right there. So we're going to do that. How do we get safely in? How do we get safely out? How do we contain, control, neutralize the contaminant, and remove it? Those are our tactical objectives with a prime directive again of safety. And then we need to think about if that's what we see, what's there that we don't see? So we need to think about our three considerations again: structure, contents, and indoor air quality. And what have we learned from other contaminants? Let me use air handling just for a moment. David Hart is absolutely the sharpest mind I've ever met on decontaminating air handling systems. And he passes every one clearance on the first time. He just finished doing a prison that had been heavily contaminated with meth. And so while he didn't have fentanyl as an actual contaminant on that, we were using it as a surrogate. What lessons did we learn from that contaminant, and how are they going to transition themselves into what we consider right now the world's most deadly indoor contaminant?
Yeah, and I would say to your point too, you said a prison, right? And that was with meth, um, which means eventually it could possibly lead to fentanyl, right? We know things happen.
Sure.
Um, and we haven't even talked about bigger areas because the point is this is about level one. We want you to understand what's at risk at level one, magnify that, and that's where you have
Right.
production and things like that. But we can't put the cart before the horse, and that's why we wanted to do a demonstration for people to understand that there's a variety of things that lead you to neutralizing that contaminant. You have to have the proper processes and procedures. You have to have the proper containment, the proper PPE, the proper products, and it puts everything together for you to understand the big picture. But again, this is a hands-on demo. This is not a training. It's just for you to understand the risk that is associated with this particular
Right.
contaminant,
Correct.
and you mentioned David Hodge and Barry Rice, which they're both going to be at the experience as well, and Barry will be
Oh,
in the
wonderful.
hands-on area as well. And we're putting all the pieces together where all of these great minds fit into processes and procedures, right? To Jeff's point, it doesn't matter if it's fire, water, mold, fentanyl, or a biological contaminant. It doesn't matter. The thing is we should have the prime directive of safety and also utilize the proper products, procedures, and protocol.
That's absolutely correct. Again, what is the contaminant? So, what are we decontaminating and why? And so, whether it's fire, water, mold, biologicals, look at that right there. This is our industry headed off in four different directions. Do you know if I take a finger, it doesn't take a lot of pressure for me to snap that and dislocate it? But if I take and I bring that together, and this is how our industry should be, okay? Properly conditioned with proper training, tactics, techniques, I can break a brick with this. That's how our industry should be. And for
I
us
would
to get
definitely
there,
go ahead.
for us to get there, some people are going to have to drop the ego at the door and leave petty differences behind. Because when we're talking about making the world a better place, and that's exactly what we should be focused on. When we talk about making the world a better place for our children and their children and stuff, leave all that behind.
And I would definitely say too, I've been in the industry for a lot less time than you have, but I will definitely say we are on the up and up and bringing our industry together to, rely and make our industry stronger than what it was when I came into this industry. And I know that stuff like this, exercises and demonstrations like this are going to be part of why and how we all come together. I mean, the experience, we're bringing in people from all over the industry, not just those who are cleaners and restorers and inspectors and assessors. We're bringing in people who handle indoor air quality. We're bringing in people like Dr. Jennifer DeBruin to talk about her specialty and how it impacts our industry and how we can better serve those that we, serve every day, if I'm being quite honest. And that's what this is all about. And I want to thank you so much for your time and talking about this. I know
Uh,
people are excited. I'm excited. I can't wait because I think that this is what we've been brought here to do, is to help not only educate our industry, but make the world a better place, right? It's not if something happens, it's when, right? Because we all know that we are going to be called, whether it's a burst pipe, an unattended death, there's a mold job. We know it's going to happen. It's just not when. We don't know when exactly, but we know that the proper training tactics, techniques, and tools will help us negotiate any
I love how that
contaminant that we
rolled right
face.
off your tongue right there. That you said that sounded
It's like
good.
I almost went through the training or something. But I will definitely say, going through that, I was already very much in tune with where I wanted the industry to go. But I will say that was my first hands-on training, and it really opened my eyes, and it's driven me to make some of these decisions for the experience and even R&R's content and the industry as a whole. Because my eyes were opened, and I thought, wow, to to think about what I've thought about for the last 10 years, this just solidified it, right? We don't have to change things for the specific contaminant we're dealing with. We can look at it and say, what is it? How do we contain it? How do we control it? How do we neutralize it? And how do we remove it? Yeah, there may be differences in PPE levels, right?
Absolutely, there are. Absolutely. Okay. If we what is acceptable at this level might not be at that level. You may be into SCBAs. Okay. Well, over here, it might just require this level of PPE. So PPE, though, is your last line of defense. In microbial warfare, your primary weapon is between your ears. It's your brain. And so when we talk about contain, control, neutralize, and remove, you got to stop for a moment and utilize your primary weapon. What start at the first one? What will it take to contain this contaminant? It could be as simple as closing the door. It might be as complicated as building containment with a decon chamber and measuring pascals of air exchange under negative pressure. But use a thinking man. This is chess, not checkers.
Yeah, you said that really, oh gosh, you laid that out perfectly because I think it is true, right? It could be simple, but it could be really complex, and it involves maybe peeling back the layers to make sure that you do everything properly, also have
Right.
the right products, the right PPE, and the right mindset. Let's be real here. Depending on what you're dealing with, involves a mindset. I think you talk about this quite a bit. If your team is hesitant or is not comfortable, you won't send them into that job. And that's what you should do, is if somebody's not comfortable, they not only become a risk to themselves, they become a risk to the entire team, and you're not doing yourselves a due service or your customer, right? Because it affects the customer at the end of the day. So, I think we're going to learn quite a bit here at the experience coming up in September. We've got 3 full days of some action-packed stuff. Jeff and Dr. Jennifer are opening up. And, I think it's huge for people to attend this because it's going to change your mindset a little bit and understand the importance of bridging our gaps and bridging all of our sub industries together to make our industry that much better and serve our customers at the highest level possible. Any last words before we sign off?
Well, just thanks for what you do because you're bringing all this experience in and you are one sharp cookie. So this is going to be the best experience conference ever.
I'm excited. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.